I'm here with Brittany. Brittany is wife to Matt. They've been married about 4.5 years, and mom of triplets. We're lucky to have a third mom of triplets to interview for this website. So her triplets are 19 months, and we're going to talk a little bit about that experience, labor and delivery, and all the things that come after
Yes.
after having triplets. So thank you so much for talking with me today.
Yeah, and thanks for asking me.
Yeah, for sure. So I mostly with Katie, and you're a good friend of Katie's.
Yes.
With Katie, I talked a lot about the pregnancy and the fertility treatments and everything. I want to focus mostly for you on what came after labor
Okay.
and delivery. But let me just first quickly tell me about finding out that you had triplets and then that pregnancy experience for you.
Well, I was incredibly blessed to have a very boring pregnancy, which is exactly what you want when you have multiples.
Yeah.
I never had preterm labor, never had to be admitted to the hospital, never had any scares with the health of the babies, which was what everyone was praying for. So that was a huge blessing.
So then you carried them full term. How many weeks were they when you delivered?
36 and 3. So I think the average triplet pregnancy is 32 to 33 weeks, and they really say full term is 37, but I think for triplets, they pretty much count it as full term because no NICU time, they came home with me, so we
Wow.
didn't have any of the normal preemie issues that most have to deal with, which was another blessing.
Yeah, that's huge. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Okay, cool. So tell me about labor and delivery. 36 and 3.
Yes.
And then they got those babies out of there.
No labor, but we were a scheduled C-section, so we went that morning. I think there were 28 people in our family in the waiting room. They probably hated us. And it was all very smooth. They took me back to the OR, got me prepped. Matt was there. Everybody came out crying. It was great. It was very relieving to A, be able to breathe again, and B, know that like all the worry through your whole pregnancy that like this today at this doctor's appointment, something's not going to be okay. At this doctor's appointment, all of a sudden something can be wrong. We have to have babies. Like all of that was over, and like they're finally here and they're finally okay. That was such a relief. And then obviously to meet them was amazing. And then we were there for 5 days and we all came home together, which was awesome. And that was quite an adjustment to come home to. But I was just glad I didn't have to leave them. Like I had been told my whole pregnancy I would. So, I don't know if you wanted to touch on this later. We got home and 9 days later, I ended up having like a big complication. But
so yeah, tell me what happened 9 days post.
So I was actually going to get to take a shift in bed, which was nice. And that's all. It was always nice when it was your shift to sleep. And I just started bleeding like really, really, really bad out of absolutely nowhere. So we called the fetal care practice and they kind of blew it off and told me I could just monitor at home. But my husband was like, no, I'm taking you in. We had to have somebody come over and sit with the babies already. So we just went in, and as we drove, it got progressively worse. I was bleeding. Like I could tell that I was bleeding really, really bad. And then once we got up to triage of the hospital and they saw how much I was bleeding, everything went really fast. And everybody, I'm a nurse, so I know your professional keep it calm face. And I was seeing that on my nurses. And at one point, my husband, who is like the world's most laid back non-medical person, was like, I mean, are we really worried about this? And she was like sticking me for an IV, and she stopped and turned around and was like, she is losing a lot of blood. We need to be very concerned about this. And at that point, he was done. He was like a baby in the corner at that point. Oh. But they actually tried to like manually extract the clots, which was the most horrifying thing I've ever been through. And they couldn't get them out. So they had to take me to the operating room for an emergency DNC. And that also did not stop the bleeding. So they were finally able to like inflate a balloon in my uterus to hold pressure on the bleeding so that they wouldn't have to take my uterus, because a hysterectomy was like the last ditch effort to make it stop. Matt, my husband, was in like by himself through the whole thing and said he thought he was going to be raising 3 9-day-old babies by himself for the rest of his life. But They took great care of me after that, but it was extremely touch and go there for a few minutes. It
Yeah.
was very scary.
Oh, that sounds terrifying. And yeah, I've been lucky enough to interview a few people who have had uh, scary moments in the hospital, and those husband stories are that's a totally different story to tell. That's
Oh, yeah.
how horrifying that would be for them.
Yeah.
So this research hospital was fairly new to multiple moms. So you were able to connect with, I think you said 9 other triplet moms who delivered from June to December of that year.
Yeah. There was 9 of us total.
6 months.
Yeah.
Tell me about finding your people and kind of how you survived that.
With our tribe. I just posted on a local multiples website, like, hey, I'm having triplets. Is there anybody else on here that's not just twins? And like, are you having them soon? Because I feel kind of lonesome. And this girl named Bellamy replied to me, and she was 3 days behind me with triplets. Like, we were literally due within 3 days of each other. And she had just accidentally found Katie on another social media site. And so we teamed up and we did some hardcore stalking of people. And we were able to slowly tick it down, like, okay, now we have 6 of us, so there has to be 3 more somewhere. And we would just like find people at the hospital and like who were there for appointments at the same time as us, or ultrasounds or whatever. And we slowly just found each other. And it was like, sorry, my children are not wanting to take their nap right now. They like, we were all terrified and we all had no idea what was going to happen. Everybody had like a totally different journey. Everybody had totally different complications, and we were just scared and had no idea what we were doing. So we kind of formed this like very deep, very quick bond with one another, because we finally found somebody that understood what we were going through. And it was like the most helpful thing. Even though we all had great family support systems, it was like a different level of support and friendship to go through something so weird to most people that most people just don't understand, and have like this whole group of people that are doing it with you. And so after the original group of us delivered, the docs had said like no other multiple moms have ever, or none of their patients had ever done this before, but they saw like how much we helped each other. And so they started referring all the new triplet moms in the practice to our group. And so, I mean, we visited each other's kids in the NICU. We brought each other food on bed rest and would come to visit. We would sit in our ultrasounds together and our non-stress tests together and talk. And, you know, when somebody goes on bed rest, we'll go visit them in the hospital. I mean, we do whatever we need to do for each other. If one of our kids is admitted into the hospital, or everybody's sick in the whole house, we'll send food or whatever. Like, we just try, as other moms who get it, to just help each other through, whether it's the original of us that still don't know what we're doing, or the newer moms who are like somewhere that we actually feel like we can give advice to. There's 25 of us now, 25 moms. And we just all try to do what we need to do for each other to get through this together, kind of.
That's incredible. What an incredible support group. That's so cool. So maybe you've already
people's faces when we go out on play dates.
I didn't even think of that. So maybe you've already answered this, but what do you feel like you are able to offer these other moms that you were not able to have during your pregnancy and early months?
I feel like just logistical things that other moms help each other with, like, what equipment do we really need? Do we need 3 of something? Do we really, how did you guys transition sleep? How did you guys transition naps? Because no mom of one baby can answer that question for you. It is a totally different ballgame. So we do for each other what normal mom friends do, but that group of people is the only one who has any advice that's worthwhile, because nothing applies to 3 that applies to 1. But for the younger, the moms of younger sets, we also try to just be an encouragement. Like, I think I told you before, we refer to the first 6 months as the trenches, because it's truly horrible in many ways. You don't get to enjoy so many of the things that a baby like one baby would bring. You know, you don't get to just sit and snuggle. Lord knows you never sleep. Like your body has been stressed and is trying to get over that. You know, it just, breastfeeding is not just this easy situation you can assume can happen. Most all of them were in the NICU and had to be discharged home without their babies. I mean, it's a different journey of motherhood in every way. And those first 6 months are just hard. And so we could just offer encouragement, anecdotal stories to make you laugh of, you know, when we were in the midst of it, just a little bit of love that, you know, here I stand. So in a year, this is going to be where you stand too. You just got to get through today. You know, we demographically, if you put us on a chart, we would hit the extreme of every demographic spectrum there is. I mean, anything you could think of. We are the most different people from the most different kinds of lifestyles, but no one takes that into consideration in our group. No one, I think everyone feels that when they're talking to other people in the group or when we're together, it's like a safe place and they know they're cared about and loved, and nothing that any of the other ones of us say, it comes from a judgmental sort of place. And so you can ask advice and then get everyone's advice and not take any of it, and it's fine. You can vent about your husband or your babies or your mother-in-law and know that that's where it stays, and all of us understand. No one feels like they're going to be disliked because of that or judged because of how they choose to do it, because that's just not the spirit of the group.
Okay. You mentioned, as we were prepping for this interview, that postpartum depression is something that's talked about more frequently now, which is a great thing. I agree.
Yeah.
But that PTSD from delivery or from pregnancy and postpartum anxiety is something that has not been talked about. And you said that, I want to say exactly what you said because I love this. It's a foreign place for vulnerable moms to get pulled under, and I believe it needs to be brought to light.
Yeah, for sure. So
cool. So tell me, for you, your postpartum anxiety, what did that look like for you?
It was very strange because I've never been that kind of a person. I was honestly the kind of person that like couldn't even fathom how people could be so crippled by being so worried about something. It never made sense to me. I feel very judgy from where I stand now because now I understand how that feels, and it's horrible. Mine was mostly not ever wanting to be away from the babies. If I ever knew that like I had to go do something where I had to leave them, I mean, even if it was with my husband's mom or something, I do feel like it got worse as time went on for a little while. And so like when I left them to go back to work when they were 12 weeks old, my mom keeps them. And so I think that was so established as part of the routine that I dealt with that better. But then as it got worse, kind of if I had to leave them with anyone else or for any other reason, or like if I thought I might have to leave them overnight, for days, I couldn't think of anything else. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. I was beside myself if I knew I was going to have to leave them. And if something came up all of a sudden where I didn't have time to worry about it for days, it was like an almost complete panic mode of like, they weren't going to be safe. I don't know. It was a very irrational, and I knew in the moment it was irrational, but I couldn't not feel it anyway. So if I was with them, I was totally fine. It was all centered around ever having to be away from them. So I really think it went back to thinking I was going to die when they were 9 months old. Like I walked out the front door hurriedly and then realized as they wheeled me to the operating room, I may never see them again. And then I think you compound that with a high risk pregnancy when, like I said, you never know what complications you're going to have. It's not like a normal singleton. You go to your anatomy scan at 20 weeks, they look at the baby's fine, and everything's going to be fine from there on out. We never got that. We never felt safe. We never felt like we were out of the woods, because until they were here, something could happen anytime I went to the doctor and anytime between doctor's appointments. And then to finally feel like in the operating room, they're here, they're fine, they're out of the woods, nothing ever went wrong. And to be 9 days removed from that and really think everything's fine, and then you almost die. It makes you feel like no matter what, you're never safe, and they're never safe, and you're never going to be out of the woods.
Okay, I want to change gears just a little bit. You are a nurse and a working mom, and working moms are not something I have represented very well on this website. So I'd love to hear from you. Was working always the plan once you had kids, and why did you decide to go back to work?
Well, I always wanted to be a nurse my whole life. I work at Cincinnati Children's, and that's where my mom worked growing up. So that was like my view of nursing, was to be a NICU nurse there. And I thought that would be awesome. And, so that's what as long as I can remember, that's what I wanted to do. But as I got older and toyed with maybe other careers, I always came back to nursing because you can work full time, maybe 3 days, and stay home with your kids the rest of the time. And I thought that was something I wanted to do. So it was always, in the plan for me to go back. I did go from full-time to part-time when I came back. So instead of working 2 12-hour shifts and an 8-hour shift, I dropped my 8-hour shift and I was just there for 2 12s. After 6 months, even that was quite stressful on everybody that needed to be helping my husband with the babies while I worked like weekends and holidays and stuff too. And so, I ended up moving departments to where I can work 8-hour shifts and work even less than that now. So it's been really hard to balance, honestly. It's been a big adjustment. It's still a struggle. I feel like it maybe always be a struggle, especially because I really, really loved what I did. Before they were born, I was a float nurse and I worked in all the ICUs and all the normal floors of the hospital. And then I was on the trauma team and I just loved that. And now I do pre-op stuff, which is a great schedule to be a mom, but that adrenaline rush and, all the fun nursing stuff, that I loved about my other job, I don't get to do anymore. So it's also been hard to give up what I loved for them, basically, to be home with them more. But you do what you gotta do for your kids. And, we've made it work so far, but I don't think I'll ever not work at all. We could live financially, but we couldn't do the fun things. And that's important to me, to be able to do vacations and things with them too. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much for answering all of my very personal questions.
No, that's not even the most personal thing I've been asked in the grocery store lately. So you're fine.
Sounds good. Are you ready for a speed round?
I think so. I forgot the questions. I don't know that I prepped for this, but we'll see.
That's all right. That's all right.
All
right. Brittany, what's your favorite sound?
I think the baby's giggling is my favorite sound.
That's great. What's your least favorite sound?
The quiet after a big loud boom.
Oh, that is such a good answer.
That's when your heart is like on the floor and you're like, oh God. You just wait for it. It's bad. It takes years off your life every time it happens.
Oh, that is such a good answer. Oh my God. All right. What's your favorite word?
It seems to be no, if you ask my children, but I don't really think that's actually my favorite word. It's just my most used word, probably.
It always is with 19-month-olds. That's always the case.
Yeah.
All right, Brittany, what do you know?
I know I was made for this.
Oh, that's a great answer too. What do you want to learn?
How to do it better.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen to that.
Yeah. What'd you say?
What scares you?
A lot of things scare me. I think having regrets at the end of life.
Yeah. Tell me about a mom you admire.
My mom.
That's a great answer.
You're going to make me cry.
Thank you to all moms out there. Brittany, what are you good at?
I'm good at crafting. I don't get much time to do it, but I do love Cricut. I like to knit. I like to read. I don't get a ton of time to do that either, but I
Cool.
am good at crafting.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me.